longest work stoppage in NFL history is now over. Players can report to team facilities, and now 2 weeks of free agency chaos is on. Owners got the bigger share of revenue they wanted, and players will be paid at least $50,000 more each year for the next 10 years. Joining me on the phone from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, is Susan Tose Spencer. She's the former general manager and minority owner of the Philadelphia Eagles. Susan, welcome to Bottom Line. Thanks for coming on today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's a great day with football starting again. I can have everybody around me stop crying.
Well, at this point, is it fair to talk about what happened in terms of winners and losers?
I think so. I think it really is. And I've been thinking about it in terms of perspective, as a business perspective for the owners and also as a business perspective for the players. I think it actually was a great collective bargaining agreement that was put together. And I'm shocked that it actually was as good as it is, because it really seems to have some common sense, some understanding that if one side of a deal gets too rich a deal, which is what happened with the players in 2006, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And that's why they opted out, the owners, in 2009. So they have to do a deal that is really consistent with both sides' wishes. And this is a unique bargaining situation here, because you had at least 12 people at the table every day, plus a magistrate from the Minnesota court.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that I'd want to do a deal with 12 people at the table, everybody yapping and giving their opinion, but it certainly gives you a diversity of opinion and advice.
Sure.
And I think that's why this one is completely different than any of the ones that have gone on before.
Well, Susan, you're familiar with the last one because you were intimately involved in that. Were there any parallels?
Very little, because it was really lawyers. The lawyers did the dirty work, and then it's like we threw them into the lions, okay, go get them. And then they fought for 4 or 5 months, and nothing happened, and then eventually some calmer heads and business heads said, let's get this thing done. We want to have football.
Well, Susan, as you just mentioned, if you think that this was a pretty good deal, I guess it begs the question, why did it take so long?
Well, here's why it took so long. If you look at where we started in March when the negotiations were continuing and then they blew up. We started a year and a half ago with a brand new executive director of the National Players Association. That's DeMaurice Smith. Nobody knew him. He wasn't from football. There was no commonality, and he was a litigation lawyer. So the owners right away had their back up. They figured, oh, this guy's really going to try to beat us around the head. And as a result of that, there was a lot of distrust on both sides. So they couldn't get a deal done off-season. And when, in March 11th, when the players decertified, and at the same day, the 10 players filed an antitrust lawsuit, obviously the owners were really angry. So you had this very, very, very bad environment between both sides. Neither side trusted the other one at all.
Yeah. Susan, if I might ask, since it's so few days until the preseason games start, is that enough time for athletes who are used to being in prime physical condition? Is that enough time for them to get up to speed? Are we going to see a lot more injuries as a result?
It really depends on the nature of the conditioning of each player off-season, and a lot of them probably did very little. That's just the nature of what I've seen in the past. I think it's going to be very tricky. I really do. And I think that some of the reports are that during training camp, they're not even going to put their first stringers in, and they're not going to put them in the preseason games. So they're not even getting any playing time. I think it's going to be a lot like the lockout we had in '82, where we played a 9-game season, and it was like, hurry up and let's get ready. And the first couple of games were tough. And I always joke people and say that this is probably going to be Washington Redskins season, because they always seem to win the Super Bowl when nobody else has any training.
Susan, if I could ask you quickly in our last minute, what about the fans? I asked a sports management specialist last week, was anybody looking out for the fans in these negotiations? And he told me very pointedly, no. Either side in these talks, were they looking out for the fans?
Well, I think that Goodell did a lot to try to position himself to make sure that the fans knew that he was doing the best he could do. And Roger Goodell is a terrific leader, and he's a marketing guy, and a very smart marketing guy. And he's got to keep his eye on the fans, because they're the people that make his job worthwhile.
Well, you know, James Harrison of the Steelers doesn't share your sentiment.
Well, I know, but you know what? Let him play football a couple weeks, and the sentiment may get better. Let him get his first paycheck, and then we'll see what he says.
Susan Tose Spencer, the former general manager, minority owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, on the phone from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Her dad once owned the Eagles. Ms. Spencer, pleasure to have you on. Thanks so much.
Great to talk to you. Have a great week.